This was the route the American pilots would take when they flew the Land-Lease warplanes from Alaska into central Russia during the Second World War. Thinking that they were flying over a cold, snowy desert, they feared to find themselves stranded in the middle of it after an emergency landing. In fact, they were flying over one of the most densely populated parts of the Soviet Union, the Soviet Socialist Republic of the Gulag Archipelago.
Вот Магадан, здесь мы садимся. А вот Ягодная. Здесь где-то километров по трассе, вот Колымская трасса, основная. Здесь где-то, не соврать, километров 500. 500. Того, что до Сусумана, вот Сусуман, 600 километров от этой трассы.
Gulag citizens did not travel by plane.
30 удаления. 13 до входа.
Удаление 30.
Решение.
Садимся.
Ближний привод.
They would normally take a train, then a boat, then march on foot to their ultimate destination, the camps.
30.
Guards and watchdogs were there to make sure no one escaped on the way.
10. 8. 6.
Today, the plane can get you to Magadan in only 8 hours, but not too many people want to travel there. 44 years since the collapse of the Gulag Empire and 10 years after the breakup of the Soviet Union, Kolyma is still a cursed place.
250.
People find it hard to talk about what happened here, and many of its secrets are yet to be told. Some of Stalin's camps stand almost intact in the depth of the Magadan taiga. Very little is known about these camps and their inmates. Saturday afternoon in Magadan. A peculiar tradition. On the day of their wedding, young couples come to the memorial to the victims of Stalinism, called the Mask of Sorrow. On their way up the hill, the couples pass the relief carvings, which show the names of prison camps, like Kinjal, Butiguchak and Canyon. Why do they come here? What do they know about these camps?
Ребят, а что такое каньон?
В смысле каньон?
Каньон.
Наташа, что такое каньон?
Это не у нас, это точно.
Для каньона
Что такое каньон?
Каньон это американское слово какое-то. С тем ассоциируется.
А вы вообще слышали, что такое каньон?
По-моему, это лагерь просто.
И вы слышали о нем что-то?
Ну, я, если честно, нет.
Я, честно говоря, тоже.
Таких вот, чтобы конкретно так сказать.
The monument, built in 1997, overlooks the city of Magadan, where many former prisoners still live.
Он везет мне в жизни 60
Vladimir Svertelov picked his tool-making skills in a camp known as Canyon, where he served his sentence from 1949 until 1952. Svertelov got a 10-year sentence for treason after the war. His only crime was to be a prisoner of war in a German concentration camp in Norway. At 77, Svertelov still uses his skills at a tool repair shop by the picturesque bay where he first came to Magadan.
Не помню, сколько было этих ответвлений гранных.
Vladimir was the only person we could find who was able to tell us more about Canyon. The barracks, watchtowers, bath, canteen are all perfectly lined up in his memory.
Тут два ряда бараков. Вот так вот тут еще были маленькие старые бараки.
А в каком вы жили?
Я жил вот тут. Тут вот тоже старый барак. Это был уже... От Семчана мы добирались на здесь 5, по 25 человек в машине и 4 охранника. 2 у кабины и на углу. Мы вот, ну, я вам сейчас покажу. Вот так вот 25 человек сидели. Вот так вот.
нас тут очень, конечно, много было раньше лагерей, но мы это не застали. Мы приехали уже попозже, 25 лет назад.
Bus driver Sasha and people of his generation rushed to Kolyma in the 60s. They worked hard, but they knew what they were working for. Next to the ruins of abandoned camps, they built dozens of thriving mining settlements. But today, Sasha has no need to stop there.
Мы были в то время, когда там жизнь кипела, там столько людей было в поселке. В каждом поселке были столовые, заправки. Садились пассажиры, выходили, общались, много знакомых было. Люди там рожались и умирали, как говорится, все. Сейчас проезжаешь, развалины, руины. Неприятное ощущение.
There was nothing else Kolyma truck could offer to the road workers and their families from the village of Strelka, but to go back to where they came from. There was no money to keep the village running, and 8 years ago it was shut down, its inhabitants evacuated. One man in the village found it hard to part with the house he has just bought and stayed behind. He calls himself Prokhor Prokhorov. Prokhor proudly shows the only decoration of his small house. The portrait of a man who made sure Prokhor found himself in Kolyma in a prisoner's robe after the Second World War.
Он себе ничего не грабил и другим не позволял. Вот я его за строгость и за режим уважаю.
Having lived in Kolyma ever since he was sent there, Prokhor doesn't complain about his present solitude.
Никакого дохода здесь не было, только ущерб один был. Сами себя они тут освещали, отапливали и сидят в магазине на заваленке, ждут, пока машина с продуктами придет. Вот так. Одни тунеядцы и пьяницы. Вот так.
But not by their own choice. This man traveled 1,000 kilometers only to find that there was no job for him in Magadan. A retired army officer, he simply cannot think about the past while his future is so uncertain.
Даже среднее поколение, пускай. Они заняты добыванием куска хлеба. Среднее поколение. Молодежь, брошена.
По большому счету им это неинтересно.
Неинтересно. Это то же самое для них, что для меня война 812 года.
After a 12-hour journey, the bus arrives in Yagodne, the town of berries in Russian, the former headquarters of the regional Gulag administration. Here lives a man who made the history of Gulag a part of his life. Ivan Panikarov has turned his small two-room apartment into a private Gulag museum, the only one of its kind in Russia. There was not enough space for all his exhibits and carefully selected archives, so he had to extend his museum into the toilet.
Прихожу утром, включаю тихо все и иной раз слушаю даже и слеза прошибает. Вот как вроде бы я на месте этого вот, что сидели.
He also collects the old prison songs, which he said turned him, an ordinary plumber from southern Russia, into a passionate researcher of Kolyma Gulag. Most of what Ivan shows to his guests he found in the ruins of the camps. But these pictures were given to him by the former prisoners and their relatives. Kolyma ex-inmates sent letters from Russia and abroad, telling their stories and asking for help in finding their friends. Ivan is always welcome in the homes of former Gulag prisoners in Yagodne. Often deprived of care and attention, they turn to him as the only one around who has time to listen to their stories. In what little time is left in his schedule, Ivan is a freelance journalist for the local newspaper. He rarely gets to writing, though. The aging printer always keeps him busy. A man of many skills, Ivan is an ideal guide to travel with. Here the journey begins from the town of Berries to Canyon. The road to Canyon was not looked after since the camp closed down. Powerful Siberian rivers washed away the wooden bridges built by prisoners. Only the vehicles like Soviet-made K-750 are able to get through to Canyon. But the slightest rain can make this road impassable even for this powerful machine. The short Kolyma summer is unpredictable, but at the local weather station they say there will be a few days of good weather. Just enough to get to Canyon. A night ride on a tractor is full of challenges. Ivan, an experienced traveler, is not yet aware of them. You have to find the right point to cross the overflowing river and to make sure your engine doesn't stop. Or you can spend hours digging in the mud as you try to pull the tractor out. This time it took almost 4. Exhausted by the long journey, the local hunters and fishermen packed in the tractor's trailer cannot enjoy the beauty of Kolyma. Soon the driver decides it's too risky to drive further. The rest of the journey must be made on foot. This land was never fully explored, not even in Gulag times. For centuries it belonged to a tribe of reindeer herders, the Avan. The Avan tried to avoid any contacts with the camps. As the Gulag spread its tentacles, they moved their nomad settlements farther north, but they could not escape reality.
Заключенные бегут, короче говоря, убежали, так рассказывают, сразу к оленеводам, мясо покушали, все поели и убегают. Потом за ними прибегает с овчаркой, и тоже покушали, поели, где? Туда. Через некоторое время оба возвращаются уже все вместе. Останавливаются у оленевода, тоже покушали и обратно в лагере. Вот так.
For Semyon Balduhin and his mother, Maria, the romance with civilization is over. No longer disturbed, they rediscover the way of life their ancestors lived for centuries. But some traces of the recent past are still there. Small nations like the Avan often keep their history records and geographical names. These people call their tiny settlement Canyon. The camp that gave its name to the Avan village is only a stone's throw away. From the height of surrounding hills, the camp can hardly be spotted. Its barracks and watchtowers hidden behind the dense vegetation. When prisoner M1241, known in his former life as Vladimir Svertelov, arrived in Canyon in 1949, the place looked different. Like thousands of other inmates, Svertelov marched to work at sunrise, returned to his barrack in the evening, all under the sleepless eye of the guards. Today, Canyon is a ghost town, and for decades, ghosts lived undisturbed. Paleontologist turned tourist entrepreneur Alexei Alabushev shares with Ivan his visions of the future of Canyon. A holder of US green card, Alexei has given away a comfortable teaching career in the West, only to find himself searching through the debris of a labor camp together with Ivan Panikarov. First few hours spent in the camp already give the two men important accounts of the prisoner's life.
Это я приготовил его. Это для музея. У меня есть кружка, миска, чайник сделан, вот еще и бидончик. И это из консервных банок вообще сделан сам.
This is what they wore on their hats. You had to keep your personal number clean and visible for the guards all the time. These coats were not good enough to keep you warm in long and severe Siberian winters, when the temperature often dropped down to 50 degrees below zero. Them and a pair of simple leather boots were worn for many years. The prisoners of Canyon developed a true skill in keeping them from falling apart.
Это уже набойка, видишь? Это вот родная, а это уже из резины вырезано и прибито вот гвоздики из алюминиевой проволоки.
Canyon proves to be hard to explore. Thick bushes have grown like a wall around the buildings. But even if one squeezes through the bushes, getting into some barracks required good climbing skills. The climbing went on. As decades passed, old wooden stairs that led to the mines had collapsed. When stairs were in place, the prisoners would climb on them 500 meters up the hill every morning.
Иван, настоящая шахтерская шапка. Причем сделана из резины, да.
This is where they put on the mining gear and went onto the mine shafts to shatter the rocks with big hammers and dynamite. Inside the hill there were large deposits of cobalt, a rare ferromagnetic metal. Because of its heat-resistant and magnetic alloys, cobalt is used primarily for the production of armor. It is also poisonous. Some of its radioactive isotopes could have been used in the atomic industry. Cobalt ore was the raison d'etre of Camp Canyon. The cobalt mines, the roaring refinery, and the camp appeared here in the delta of the Verina River in 1946. Just a year after the Soviet Union and its allies crushed Nazi Germany. At that time, many hoped that the Gulag system would be abolished. New waves of purges followed instead. Often the very same people who had fought the victorious war were rewarded with a ticket to Kolyma. Some were sent here straight from German concentration camps.
В плену было легче. Здесь почему? Может, кому-то тут было тяжело, но тяжело, конечно, очень было тяжело здесь. В плену мы были у врага, как положено.
The Gulag of the late 40s was different from the Gulag of vicious 1937. There was no more chaos. The impassive machine functioned with deadly precision. It would swallow up newcomers and dispatch them to their workplaces instantly. Free labor was much appreciated in a country gearing up for the Cold War and arms race with the West. The 1954 amnesty for political prisoners mysteriously coincided with the fact that cobalt from Kolyma was no more in demand. After a short while, Canyon was closed down and abandoned.
Свертелова и по данному делу реабилитирован. Зам председателя военной коллегии Верховного Суда Союза СССР Лихачев.
Walking in Canyon and sifting through its remnants, you start to believe that you can recall everything that happened here, crystal clear. But there are certain limits to that. With the help of time and permafrost, Canyon has hidden away some of its darkest secrets forever. With all his new discoveries, Ivan found it hard to leave this place too soon. There were so many new exhibits to take back, some of them far too big for an old backpack. How could he possibly leave these propaganda posters that he found scattered almost intact in the attic of the barracks? They definitely have to go. Ivan spent many hours making wooden boxes to transport them safely. This time Ivan's ultimate dream has come true. He has finally found the right bunk bed to make into the central piece of his museum's collection. Watching Ivan pulling out the old rusty nails, one can ask why all this effort? Will modern Russians care who slept on these bare planks, and most importantly, who likes to be reminded about the Gulag?
Ну, я же опять говорю, может быть, сейчас бессмысленно, а потом ведь сейчас нам интересно о том, как революция на самом деле была, о царской семье. Ну и время пройдет, может быть, кому-то пригодится. Я, в общем-то, думаю, что я черновую работу делаю, самую черновую, а потом кто-то, дай бог, что встретился человек такой, или дай бог, внука мне. И все это, тогда уже он все собранное мной обобщит, я так думаю.
Нужно показать всем правдивую картину, или хотя бы то, что можно сегодня как-то интерпретировать, потому что осталось от той эпохи. Ни архивы, ни какая другая литературная информация, сегодня информация, так сказать, единой какой-то оценки вот этой эпохи не дает.
Alexei believes that people should touch the history with their hands.
Ребята, вот это там миска, из которой ели, а вовсе не там для собаки. элемент посуды. Там. Вот это вот нара, на которых спали живые люди. Здесь нет ни одеяла, нет ничего. Это доски голые. Но на них действительно спали, потому что спать было больше не на чем. Вот это вот ватник, который люди одевали там, в 50-градусный мороз. И сказки, если вы где-то прочитаете, что заключенные ходили в тулупах зимой и так далее.
It's one thing introducing Canyon to people like Ivan Panikarov and occasional film crews, but does Alexei have the right to turn labor camps like this into a tourist attraction?
Все, что касается любой возможности получать какую-то прибыль в бюджет, я считаю, что это уже не кощунство. Другое дело, кто и как будет это показывать. И вот здесь я думаю, что очень серьезную и большую помощь может оказать вот Иван.
А ты был бы, скажем, готов к тому, чтобы, я не знаю, водить людей, показывать им, объяснять?
Да. Да. Я знаю много мест таких.
Flying back to Magadan. From high above, you no longer see the camps with their barbed wire fences and gloomy barracks. Below, there are only clear rivers, endless hills, and taiga. Taiga that spreads its green carpet up to the shores of the Russian Pacific. A strikingly beautiful land that is still struggling hard to come to terms with its past and survive through its present. Walking away from the camp with a small suitcase in his hands 48 years ago, this man thought he would never put on a prisoner's uniform again. But he did. This time of his own free will. In fact, he wears it every weekend, whatever the weather or other plans he might have. Vladimir Svertelov brings hardy northern flowers and strokes the cold stone. He sits down and speaks with his friends who never made it out of Canyon.
Ну что, ребята, в субботу я не был, в воскресенье не был. Дождался, когда приедут молодые ребята. Они ездили снимать каньон. Вот, видал я кадры, все там развалилось, но все на старом месте, все рухнуло. Так как все сейчас порушилось. Нет больше каньона, все там заросло, зона заросла. Дороги на фабрику, на рудник, все заросшее. Креплюсь, держу слезы. Много ушло не вовремя. Ничего поделаешь, такая наша судьба.
The story ends here. But the search for the truth continues.
Еще вот, наверное, я один из тех людей, о которых говорили в 30-х годах, тех, кто подвергался незаконным репрессиям, кто говорил, потомки разберутся. Вот я, наверное, один из потомков их, который хочет в чем-то разобраться.